All right. Well, today we're blessed with Mr. Ed Cunliffe. Ed, how are you doing?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I am great. Ed, I'm going to cut right to it because I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. And I'm assuming you're going to say the same. I mean, the quality and the pound for pound coming from your owners is unbelievable. And I appreciate you sharing this weekly email that you send. And the last one, I mean, just again, to rattle off some numbers. I mean, high rollers, Justin Hageman, 48,000, right? We're talking for a week. Rebby, 41,000, Cooper Brown, 40,000, right? So your top three, 40 grand plus. Then Holly Clark, 35,000, Spencer, 33,000, Tark, 32,000. And then honorable mentions. I mean, these guys aren't even high rollers. They're honorable mentions because they're under 30. You got Nicole Skovgaard, 28,000, Taylor Cherry, 28,000, Will Smothers. I mean, the list goes on. But I mean, if you just take the production from that list, I mean, it's probably, I didn't add it up, it's probably $500,000 in business right there, on a weekly basis. So maybe the first question, have you ever seen anything quite like this? Like your owners seem to be doing better than they ever have in the history of the business?
So no, I haven't seen this many people doing this well consistently. And that's not a weird week, and we've had some weird weeks, where Rebby put up 68,000 and, we had two people over 60,000 and three over 50. So that's kind of like a solid standard week these days.
Right. Right. So, I mean, you're sending me these weekly emails and I'm looking at them like, again, it's not like, okay, they got the hot hand, high roller coaster going on. No, these guys are consistent high rollers performing at and we have them in our org too, every week, Brennan Falkerson's hitting $65,000 wires and, no fluke, like he's certainly pacing to run a $3 million ICL this year. But you've just got so many of them. You've got 10 plus owners all hitting $20,000 plus wires week over week. So I'm going to ask kind of the obvious question. We'll see what kind of, where this goes, but what are you crediting that to? Like, it wasn't that long ago that we had the pandemic and, we all get exposure to each other's production and, your crew was, you were humbled a little bit. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, Sebastian was outperforming you and that gave you a little kick in the butt, but you've come a long way. You've tripled, quadrupled your org production really in about 1.5 to 2 years. So what do you credit that to, Ed?
Well, so you bring up a good point. And for the record, his org only beat me 1 week and it got my attention. Right. And when he beat me, when I've been in the business longer than he has, when his org beat mine, it woke me up and I texted him. And I said, hey, bud, hey, congrats. I see your org did over 300 grand. You beat me. And then I said, number one, you've awakened the giant. Number two, I forget what number two was, but number three, I said, I'm going to double you up. And within a year, I sent him another text and we were doing 600 and something and he was doing 300 and something, and I just sent him, kisses or whatever the case may be. So life is all about learning, and human beings only learn through pain and suffering. Probably the worst thing that can ever happen to anybody who's trying to achieve a high standard in anything is to get comfortable, because when you're comfortable, it's all good. There's no fight, there's no piss and vinegar, it's all good. And if you're comfortable for long enough and you stop moving forward, you go backwards. It's as simple as that. So best thing that could have happened to me, and right about the time that happened, I decided to go in the field myself as a 45-year-old at the time and hit the field. And I hit the field every single day, Monday through Friday for 10 weeks, which is a long time. And I was actually doing it in South Carolina. So I was leaving my house in Atlanta on a Monday morning, and I wasn't coming back until Friday night, which wasn't ideal. But there was a purpose to it. And I went out on residential, and, you know, I would say every day for the first 2 weeks, I woke up, you know, like I normally would, like, oh, what am I doing today? And then I was like, oh shit, I'm going in the field. And here's the thing about the field. The thought of going in the field is 10 times worse than actually just getting out there. Once you're out there, it's fine. It's like jumping into, you know, slightly cold water. As soon as you're in, it's fine. And anyway, so in those 10 weeks, I made $24,000 as a rep, and I made 38,000, you know, as an owner, right? With owner stroke in 10 weeks. And what it did was a few things for me. It humbled me for sure. It made me a lot more empathetic to the guys in the field, because there were days where I worked my nuts off. I worked the system to a T and didn't do anything. So that is possible, you know, and it's very easy when you're not in the field on a regular basis to give somebody a hard time when they roll a donut, you know. So a lot more empathy, but really the biggest thing that helped me out with it was I stopped playing defense with the average to weaker owners that were like, I don't want to go in the field. And I'm going to throw this in there. Larry Dorfman, Adam's dad, who's very, very successful. He built a company that's, I think he sold it. I think it was probably worth about $300 or $400 million when he sold it. And he would make it a point every quarter to do the quote unquote grunt work. So he'd spend a day as a call center rep. He'd spend a day on the floor, you know, blah, blah, blah. And his quote to me was, Ed, you don't ever want to get too far away from the thing that makes the money. And so the field is where all the money comes from, you know? And so it was very helpful for me. And then, well, in terms of going on offense, looking back, I was listening to a lot of excuses from the guys that they were telling me, and I didn't have a whole lot of sort of comeback for them. I was just agreeing with them, you know? And so what it did, you know, I basically, with all the guys that were middle of the road, you know, I was like, hey, if you want to take these things to the next level, and I would just explain the math to them. And that's something that I'm happy to do with you guys right now. And this won't please everybody. It'll probably annoy some people. It might embarrass some people, but if you listen, it will help everybody. If your wire is less than 10 grand, you're running a bit of a joke of a business, plain and simple. I don't know how much eggs cost right now, but inflation's a real thing. So having a $10,000 wire 5 years ago is not the same as having a $10,000 wire now. A $10,000 wire now is dog shit. Plain and simple. It's dog shit. It's awful. And that's how I feel about it. If you have 3 good reps, maybe 4 good reps, you can have a $10,000 wire these days, in my opinion. Okay. So if you have less than a $10,000 wire, you personally, as the owner, who's always going to be the best in the field, who's always going to be Kobe on the court, always. You might be a bit rusty, but give yourself a week. There's a reason why you're an owner, and it's because you're the best in the field. when you have less than a $10,000 wire, you personally can go out and spend your time in the field, and you can absolutely account for 30 to maybe 40% of your company's income. I mean, as an owner, again, every campaign's a little different, whatever, but I keep up with all of them. You go put $2,000 as a rep in the field. And again, this isn't like make-believe. I did 24,000 in 10 weeks. So that's 2.4K on average, right? As a rep. So you put 2,000 in your code as a rep with owner stroke on pretty much any campaign. That's $3,500 that you're bringing to the wire. So if you have a $7,000 wire right now and you're not going in the field, by you going in the field and just doing your thing, you can increase your wire by 50%, right? But it's more than that. Everyone's seen the meme where it's boss versus leader, right? It's like the boss is behind all the guys whipping them, and then the leader is out there with them, leading the way, pulling the block, right? And so when you go out there, magic happens. The guys are like, oh, wow, this guy's in it with us, right? He's in the fight. And then they start competing with you. Then the mood changes. It's not like, hey, we're building this thing for this guy. It's we're doing this together, and depending on how good you are, a great place to be is when they realize, holy shit, he's going to do this with or without me, right? So anyway, so that's how I feel about less than 10 grand. Like, I feel like you personally can move that needle. Now, as you go up, things change, right? So I'll go to the other extreme. If Hageman's got a $50,000 wire, him going in the field for a day right now is a bad decision. It's bad business, because he needs to be super busy recruiting, because he has a number of leaders who are earning their spot and want an interview tomorrow. So him going in the field all day, without, even if he made 4 grand in, 400 or 500 in the field, that would actually slow his business down. So it's kind of a step-by-step thing. But yeah, so what I went over like 18 months ago is like, look, if you're less than 10 grand and you're whining and complaining, and people like to go, oh, my recruiting, it's not that. There's a great book called The One Thing. It's awesome, and it's an easy read. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller. So you probably heard of Keller Williams. He took Keller Williams, they were a small local real estate company, and he grew them to be the biggest real estate company in the world. And his whole theory was, if you just focus on the one most important thing, like at a time, you can exponentially grow. So it's like if you're really overweight, the one thing is your diet. I mean, you can do other stuff, but that one thing is going to be 80% of it, right? And so it's an incredible book. So he grew that business. They grew year over year for 20 years. And their worst year of growth was like 20%. But they had a bunch of years where it was over 100% growth. And all they did was focus on the one most important thing. And then once that thing was handled, they moved on to the next one most important thing. So if your wire is less than 10 grand, the most important thing is field leadership. I promise. And here's where it gets really ugly. Like, I can break it down a little bit. A $10,000 wire can be deceiving. If you have a $10,000 wire and 10 guys, you're going to have a $5,000 wire real soon. If you have a $10,000 wire and 4 guys, you're going to have a $20,000 wire pretty soon. So if I have a $10,000 wire and 10 guys, my high roller is probably making $600 or $700. And then I have a bunch of guys making 500, 400, right? The worst thing that can happen in that situation is that your recruiting is good. So the new guy comes in, they're a little skeptical, but they're excited. The opportunity seems good. They go out with their trainer. Well, we already know the best guy is going to show them $700 a week. But what if they don't go out with that guy? They go out with the $600 guy, right? And then you got to put your shoes in yourself in the shoes of the new guy. My trainer, the expert, the guy who's really good at this, just made $600 a week. I'm not going to make any money. And then they leave, and then it all unravels, right? And so I don't even so much care about the wire these days. I look at Salesforce and I go, all right, what's the white rabbit doing? Who's the person that's showing everybody else what is possible? Because we all have limiting beliefs, right? I think the white rabbit has to be making over $2,000 a week. And if you don't have one, you need to be the white rabbit. And again, that's just my opinion. And it's not even really an opinion at this point. It's factual if you want to grow, right? So Rebbe had crazy growth last year. She had a white rabbit of white rabbits, this guy Griffin Trotter, who used to be a cop and worked in St. Louis, pretty dangerous job, wasn't getting paid a lot, $65,000 a year. He started working in her office at the end of February, and he made $131,000 in the field last year as a rep. So you can kind of do the math. He was making on average $13,000 a week, $13,000 a month in the field as a rep. So he was putting up $4,000 a week, a lot. And because he was the white rabbit, if you look at her Salesforce, and this is uncanny, and I've studied this, I spent hours on this. I could pull up anyone's Salesforce, and you should do it the same for yours. On any given week, it's very interesting. The average leader tends to make half of what the white rabbit is doing. So because this guy was making $4,000 on the regular, that was kind of like, oh, that's what's possible. She has a bunch of people making $2,000 a week. And another thing, I'm just going to throw this in there about standards, and I learned this from Hageman. So Hageman is very good at business, and I'm taking zero credit for any of it. But he's doing on a good week these days, he's doing about $140,000 a week with 4 offices now. One of his guys just opened up an office. So he does this all call every Friday with all of his offices and all the reps. And when they get to the high rollers, the only reps who get to speak made over $2,000, right? They're the only ones who get kudos. So what's interesting is the guy who made $1,976 in Hageman's org sits on their hands during that Friday call. Now let's flip over to another office where they don't really have very high standards because there isn't a white rabbit and no one's showing them the way. You got somebody who the high roller made $1,300 and they're taking Saturday off. Right? Let's flip back over. So now the person who made $1,976 is fired up next week. And they want to, everyone loves recognition. So that person now goes out the next week and says, this is my new standard. I got to, and so what's crazy is because they've raised their standard so high, and none of this is confusing, by the way, guys. It's like, why was Kobe one of the greatest? He put in more time and effort. That's it. The whole 4 a.m. thing, right? He was at the gym at 4 a.m. It's not confusing. So Hageman has guys who have already made $3,000 Monday through Friday who go out on Saturday and work a full day. Whereas I have guys who have $8,000 wires and they're like Saturday's optional for them on res. You know, it's like a different game they're playing. You know, so it's kind of like I don't know. To me, it's like simple. But all right, once you get over 10 grand, it's now turns into a hybrid, right? Over 10 grand, you probably going to spend a little bit more time on recruiting. And, you know, maybe you're in the field 4 days as an owner, 3 days, I don't know, whatever. It's not really about the number of days. It's about staying busy and maximizing your time. What I have learned is the $20,000 wire is a massive turning point. It's like the pivot point. Once you get over 20, it's really easy to get to 25 and 30 and 40. And I think one of the reasons, Jamie, we've had some really big numbers is I used to tell people that were at 40 grand, like, you did it. You're the best. You should go on vacation. Whereas now I'm like, well, can you do 50? Can you do 60? And they can, because it's so easy to grow from there, because when new guys come in, they're just surrounded by people who are getting the job done. Like, that's all they know. Right? And so if people like Cooper and, you know, some of these guys, I'm like, someone's going to do 70 grand. Who's going to do 70? It's really, at this point, it's just feed the beast, you know? And obviously there's a limit to, you got to be happy at some point, but you know, that really is how it works. Anyway, so let's go back to, you know, the average office and the average owner. And Sebastian talked about this at Keys. It's like, let's take it to the extreme of all extremes. I read Elon Musk's book last summer. His first book, his first business that he built was called Zip Hub or something. He sold that, and then he started working on PayPal, sold that, went, you know, whatever. But his first business, he was working 22 hours a day, anywhere from 20 to 22 hours a day, which is ridiculous. It's nuts. Who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. But it gives you a good point of reference for, all right, that's one of the most successful people ever in business. So in the book, basically he would program all day and would lay down on this beanbag at 5 a.m. in the morning. And then whenever the first sales rep came in at 7 a.m., they had to kick the beanbag to wake him up, right? So you go, okay, that makes sense. So let's just dial that back. If you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, we all get 24 hours in the day. It's all about just like, what are you doing with your time in the day? What are you doing with those hours? Here's what I have seen, and I've had a front row view. The average owner in our business, they'll say to me, I'm like, okay, you know, your wire was 8 grand. That's not good. You may be breaking even, and you didn't go in the field. And they'll say stuff like, I've really been focusing on recruiting. I go, okay. What does that mean? Well, I've been, and I'm like, how many phone calls have you made? None. How many resumes have you pulled? None. So when you say you're focusing on, we're like, what are you doing? Oh, I hired this new girl. Okay. How much time did that take? An hour? of one day once, right? And it's just kind of like we kid ourselves, like, oh, I'm not going in the field because I'm focusing on this. Like, and so what I see is the average crappy owner puts about 4 hours of work in a day. Atmosphere, some interviews, right? In terms of like actually growing the business. And like, how well can you expect to do with that? You can probably maintain, but if the goal is to grow, right? You gotta be productive. And, you know, and it is what it is. And the only reason I'm saying this, I want everyone in this, and I don't know how anyone's, I literally don't know how anyone's doing on the school, right? But these are the type of conversations I've had with my guys who were kind of the 10 grand guys who are now 28 grand guys. But they were 10 grand guys for like 3 years. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like, you know, and I think it all boils down to, you know, when you start becoming more concerned about your future, you start taking the present and the day-to-day more seriously, right? I remember that for me when I was 25, I was like, that was when I kind of felt like I grew up. I'm like, where do I want to be when I'm 30? Where do I want to be when I'm 40? You know, and you certainly don't want to be in the same spot. And it's very easy to do that in our business. If you have an $11,000 wire and you're making a little bit of money and it's easy, you know what I mean? You can kind of take it easy and make 100 grand a year. But what's the point of getting in this business to do that? You know, it's like when you know, there's rookie managers that made $400,000 profit last year. Fact. Rookies, they don't even, like Cooper Brown doesn't even know what he's doing. He made over 400 grand profit last year. He didn't even open until February. So you're like, okay, he's playing the same game that I'm playing, right? Because we're all playing the same game. And so I've really gotten into this space, and I'm saying to all my owners, I'm like, look, if you want to get at, like, you want to be like, if you want to be jacked like Gareth, I see Gareth over there, right? If you want to be jacked like him, like if you're like, I want to look exactly like that when I take my shirt off, the easiest and quickest way to get there would just be like to hang out with him for a week and just copy what he does, you know? He's like, he's waking up at 6 and you're like, oh, I normally wake up at 7:30. Okay. Just, he gets up at 6 and then does his cardio, whatever. I'm just making stuff up, obviously. But, and he intakes this much protein and this, and then he lifts weights these days and he does arms and legs and he does back and right. But if you just did that over time, you would get the same result. And so I'm really trying to get a lot of my owners to understand, like, if you just do the exact same thing that this person who's got a $50,000 wire every week is doing, you'll get the exact same result. And I feel very strongly about that. It's not a talent-based business. You know, Hageman still goes in the field. He doesn't go very much, but what he does is he'll go in the field with his like sharpest of sharp new guys who's out on day one, and he'll go kick it with them for 2 hours and watch them pitch and give him a little bit of feedback, right? And obviously for that sharpest of sharp new guy, that guy's like, this is awesome. The owner of the company is out with me. But then for Justin, he's obviously going to be able to tweak a few things like, hey, don't say that, say this, right? And he, you know, he got $156,000 promote and owner bonus at Keys. And then you've got somebody else who got no outside deals out last year, who isn't doing that great, that literally hasn't stepped foot in the field in 4 years. You know what I mean? So I like shrug my shoulders at those guys. I'm like, I don't know, like, what do you want to do? What floats your boat? You know? And I may have chunked this together. Like, you're not going to all of a sudden have a $50,000 wire, but if you have a $10,000 wire, there are specific steps to get to 15, to get to 20, to get to 25, to get to 30, right? You just have to replicate those things. And then it's just a matter of, well, do I want to do that? You know, is the juice worth the squeeze, as they say? But I know for a fact, everyone on this call, when you look at the rankings, right, you want to be at the top. Like, this business is built for competitive people. When you're at the top, you can't wait to open that email. When you know you're kind of not giving it your best, and you kind of already know you're not going to be towards the top, you don't even open the email. You just hide from it, you know? And this happens at every level, by the way. You know, when the Friday org consultant numbers come out, I'm like, oh, where are we at? But there was a couple of years there when I was slacking off. I was super comfortable. I wasn't working that hard. I wouldn't even open the email. You know, I might check it out on Sunday night, you know, after a few drinks. And it's like, you know, it's like whatever gets measured gets managed. You know, it's like if you kind of know you need to lose weight, the easiest thing to do is just to not ever step on the scales, because then there's no accountability. You just don't know. You're in the dark, you know. But when you start measuring, you know, what's going on, that's when the magic happens. You know, when you actually, like, a lot of my guys have really crappy recruiting. They also have no idea about the numbers, none. Whereas the people that have the best recruiting, they know exactly how many direct, you know, apply resumes they got. They know all their numbers. The guys with crappy recruiting, they got no clue, because they just stick their head in the sand. They know it sucks, and they would rather just not deal with it, right? So anyway, so hopefully some of that makes sense. I just rambled on there for a while.
So just real quick with that Salesforce, because you said, the second time I've heard you say how uncanny it is that whatever the white rabbit is doing, if you want to, I mean, the average dollar per rep is half of that white rabbit. So you could have if the average rep is making 500, oh, I bet you the white rabbit's making 1,000. If the average dollar per rep's 2,000, I bet you the average rep is, or what am I trying to say?
It's the average lead. Yeah. So whatever it is uncanny. I could pull it out for you right now and show you. You could pick an office, whatever the high roller is doing, the average leader, not even rep, because there's always going to be new guys and guys on the way out. The average leader that's like in the game makes about half of what the white rabbit's doing, because it's all a matter of what is good, right? It's what is acceptable, what is possible. And so when someone's making $3,000, people are like, wow, I can at least make 1,500.
And so in all those offices, Ed, again, from 40 grand to 20, would you say that in each one of those offices, there's at least one rep making 2 grand or more?
Oh yeah.
Like, without exception. It's not like one of those offices just like, dude, there's 50 guys with an average rep making 600 a week. No, it's like, no, the pound for pound, the dollar per rep is strong because there's at least one guy making 2K.
Yeah.
So they've all really bought into that.
I don't know. I mean, it's not even that some of them have bought into it. It was more me recognizing it and then helping out some of the other guys. But yeah, it's you know, but like going out in the field, was so helpful for me, because it's very easy when you've not been in the field a lot to think, oh, things must be different now and post-COVID, and the field has not changed one bit for me in 22 years. It's the same. If you have a good attitude and you work hard, you do really well. That's it. And so anyway, going back to Griffin, right? He was the top rep in my org last year. This is his whole attitude. Like, I was a cop. I was doing super dangerous shit on a regular basis, risking my life for 65, 70 grand a year, right? So when you talk to him about the field, he's not like, oh, the field. He's like, I love it. All I have to do is walk around and talk to people, right? So that's his attitude about it. That's all I do. I don't have to, worry about the bad guy shooting me. All I do is walk around and talk to people. And I actually talked to Brendan Teague about this, right? Imagine if we went back 150 years in time and you ended up in some village. Everyone had manual labor jobs, right? So you'd see the guy on top of the roof, thatching the roof. You'd be like, that's obviously the roof thatcher. And then you'd see a guy putting a horseshoe on a horse, and you'd be like, that's the blacksmith, right? Everything was manual. And then if they asked you, what do? I just walk around and talk to people. And then 2 weeks later, money magically shows up in my bank account. They'd be like, you're a wizard, right? That's all we do. That's all we do. Anyway, so more importantly, with Griffin, like, I've had him do so many calls, and his pitch is good, but a pitch can only be so good. It's solid, but his whole thing is, I try and get out there first before everybody else, and I always stay out there 30 minutes longer. Like, that people want to overcomplicate the field. It's just straight. As long as you have a good work ethic and attitude, it's just straight law of averages. And then he works every Saturday. If I speed on Interstate 85 tomorrow, I go 95 miles an hour for 4 exits, I may or may not get a speeding ticket. I probably won't. But if I do it every day for the next month, I'm probably going to get 4 or 5. Like that. That's how I explain the law of averages to new guys, Okay. So Griffin just takes more shots. He gets more no's. He also gets more yeses. You know what I mean? And so as I evolve in this business, as we all do, and this is like timeless, right? Like, the best sports coaches end up always keeping it simple. They boil it down to the fundamentals, So anyway, and I think that's a good place to come from. Is like, this is not complicated. It's not. You can tell yourself it is. It's not. It's all right. The best owners in my org, here's what they do. I'll give you a 1, 2, 3. If you do these 3 things, you'll be golden. And they sound so easy and so simple, but they're harder to do. All right, here's the big one. Number 1, spend 30 to 45 minutes on a Sunday or whatever day, if you're on retail, the day before your week starts, spend 45 minutes really planning out your week. The schedule, who's running the stations. I'll show you this. I mean, like, this is part of Hageman's genius, if you will. But he doesn't even do it anymore. His leaders do it. And like, I'm trying to get everyone to do it. Let me, I'll come back here in just a sec. This is huge. So again, and I'm not judging at all. I am reporting because I've winged it so many times and gotten away with it, but it's not the best way to do it. All right, let me go back here. All right, let me show you this. So every Sunday, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
So this is his top leader. Sends out this email to everybody on a Sunday. So this was sent at 5:17 on a Sunday. You know, blah, blah, blah. These are the guys that are going to Knoxville. These are the guys that are going to Indianapolis. Here's the standards. To take Saturday off without a leader on your team, you must be at tier 6 or $1,700. Take Saturday off with a leader on your team, you must be at tier 6 or 1,700, and all of your first chain leaders have to be on standards. So just reminding people of the standards. Kudos, great job to these guys. They all hit the big boy bonuses. Again, everyone loves recognition. This is the team breakdowns in Hagman's office. Like, so Christian's team, which is Team Apex, if he had an office code right now, he'd be like the number 5 office on AT&T with 131 products. So you know that guy's going to go out strong. And then it's the schedule. So this guy here, and I don't know, maybe it was the week before, but let's suppose that Derek is a newer leader that we're really excited about. And we want to build his confidence. Well, he gets this email on Wednesday. And he knows he's running the leaders meeting on a Wednesday, right? So he can now fully prepare what he wants to run his leaders meeting on. He can meet with Justin on Monday or Tuesday to go over it, tweak it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so again, it's so simple, right? Just to give people the heads up on what the schedule is. And I'm sure lots of you are doing this. And then what they do is all of the leaders share their goals, but they send it to everybody. And so I don't know if it's on this one, but all of them then reply all. I think they copied Gary on it. Oh, so I sent this to my org. So I'm like, below is an email that Christian sent out for all the leaders in Justin's office while he's relaxing in Bora Bora. All the leaders replied, all right, if you're not doing this in your office, you are obviously you're missing the boat. Here's why. Sharp people crave structure and consistency. You want to prepare your speakers for the week in advance. It's a great platform to give kudos and recognition to the top performers from the previous week, which creates momentum and increased motivation. You want your best people scheduling one-on-ones all week and maximizing their time. When your leaders call their shot and share their goals with the group, it equals massive accountability, which obviously equals better results. Everyone is reminded of the office standards, e.g. how to earn Saturday off. It will massively increase the chances of highly effective, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, that wasn't really what I meant to show you. What everyone does is all the leaders reply all to that email with their goals. So before the week even begins, everyone knows what's up, you know, and everyone's calling their shot. And, you know, all of us need to be held accountable. All of us do. Even at 47 years old, I need to be held accountable. It just works. It's helpful. You're more likely to actually get it done, you know? So it's little things like that. So that's number one, is do the weekly schedule before the week begins. Number two, again, all of my top offices are territory Nazis. You know, they manage the shit out of their leads. Like, it's crazy. They're so on top of it. They don't trust their guys to cut their own leads. Like, they are so on top of it. They manage it like crazy. Like, Cooper Brown's in Knoxville. It's not a big market. And he manages it. Oh my God. Okay. And then I go to a crappy office and they say showtime. And then you see leaders sitting on the chairs in the office or probably out in the field in their car, cutting their own territories. Like, doesn't work. I mean, it kind of works, but it's not the best way to do it, right? So they are territory. I mean, they're so on top of their territory. And then the third thing is, and this is kind of maybe the big one, they're willing to do whatever they need to do at the time. Like Cole Gardner had a strong year last year. And I asked him to play golf like 3 weeks ago, and he was like, no, man, I'm going in the field. Like, he promoted this guy, Mark, out, who's already got $20,000 wires. He's dropped down to 16. And he's like, fuck this. And so he's been in the field for like 2.5 weeks straight, you know, and he's doing really well. Like he's got loads of money saved. He's got an outside deal, but it's just that mentality of what does my business need the most right now? You know? And here's the thing, guys, like all of this that I've been talking now for way too long, 50 minutes. I'm coming from an angle of, I think it makes sense to become a consultant in this business. To me, that's the only thing that makes sense, because it means you're coming through for your guys who are busting their ass in the field for this carrot to run their own office, right? So the only way you can be a consultant is by promoting out offices. No other way to do it. I think it also makes sense to be a consultant because you get paid more to do this exact same shit, right? If you're an organizational consultant now and you're running your ICL and you have what, a $15,000 wire head, you get an extra $1,000. If it's a $20,000 wire, you get an extra $2,000. And if you have a $25,000 wire, you get an extra $3,000 every week. Just, you haven't done anything differently. Plus your overrides go up. $1 million bonus. Looks like Sidcor's going to hit $1 million in 2026, which means that the first third of the million payment will get paid out at Keys at 2020 in 2027. They're literally going to be handing out checks that say 33333.33 to all the consultants. And then the next year and the next year. So it's $1 million, right? So everything I just said only makes sense if you want to be a consultant. If you want to run an office, sales office, and have salespeople come and go and get excited about this management thing that nobody ever gets to do, then you can disregard everything I said. You know what I mean? And I've had some crappy owners say to me, like, you were always talking about consultant, Ed. I don't even care about consultant. I'm like, okay, what do you care about? I just want to come through for my guys. I'm like, okay, well, just come through for your guys. If you come through for your guys, by default, you'll be a consultant. Like, you won't even help it. You can't stop it. You know? So it all just depends on what do you want? What do you want? And I'll tell you this, if you have a $15,000 wire a week, you know what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens in terms of career advancement. You'll make some money. Nothing happens. If you have a $25,000 a week wire on average, everything happens. you know, like you'll consist and, you know, you'll just be growing. And it's no different than if an average dude who's 6 foot tall, whatever it is, consumes 2,400 calories a day, whatever it is, 2,800 calories, whatever the number is, if they always consume that number, they will not gain any weight, they will not lose any weight, they will maintain, right? But if you started consuming 3,600 calories, you gain weight consistently. If you only consume 1,600, you lose weight consistently. So anyway, so maintaining in our business really does you no good. And you got to get aggressive. In my opinion, like, what the hell do I know? But I guarantee, you know, you guys didn't see Hep run in the top office in the country. I did. I mean, intense, like fucking tenacious. I went to Hep's office. He had 62 people in his office. You know what I mean? You come to my, you know, I ran the top office in Sigcor in 06, 07, 08, 3 years in a row, top ICL. I mean, you want to talk about intense, and it's kind of sucks because, and there's always a little part of me that's like, fuck, should I just run an office again? Because if I did, I would fuck some shit up. Because it's not hard, it's just hard work. You know? And all of you guys can do it. It's just, what do you want to do? But that's why I like going to Keys, because I always have my best year after I just sat in the crowd and I just clapped other people, because in my brain, I was like, they're not any better than I am. I just know that they're working harder than I am. That's it. They're planning, they're taking it more seriously. They're executing. And then I would just get so fired up. And the cool thing is, it's March. I mean, you can hammer down, and you can literally be top dog at Keys next year. You know? And then you'll be on stage and other people will go, what did you do? And then you'll just be like, you know what? I've just been working really hard, taking it serious. It's just like, around we go. So anyway, hopefully some of that was helpful. I just wanted to tell it like it is.
Well, Ed, we appreciate your time. We went a little over here, but that's okay. Get hydrated again. Take a breath. But no, it's great. It's just great. It's awesome every week. Please continue sending me that email, because it very much inspires me, motivates me. I mean, this is the business we've been dreaming of for many years. It's finally come where our average reps are making great money, our average owners making great money. And then the best of the best are like, I think Gary was telling me too, like the amount of owners that picked up a check for 100,000 or more. Was it something like there were 7 or 8 owners that picked up 100 grand or more in the PO bonus?
So this is funny. So Hageman was going through the airport in Jacksonville. While Cooper went through first, and some lady thought he was a PGA Tour player because they give out the big checks. He's like, nah, I just do sales. But when Hageman went through, the TSA rep was like, damn, 156,000. He goes, I'll make that doing this job in 5 years. And he was like, and that's just your bonus? Anyway, not that I think that TSA rep is a good bar to compare yourself to, but that is pretty cool. You know, it's just a bonus.
Yeah.
How you doing?
That's amazing. We've come a long way, but keep it up, Ed. You're definitely you're the white rabbit right now. Everybody's chasing.
I'm getting aggressive. Like we're gonna be at 850,000. So this is a good little thing to leave you with. So I played golf today with a guy called Chris Johnson, who started on my team in 2001. I haven't seen him in over 10 years. I took him out to my golf course, he moved with me when I was a rookie owner in 2002. He was part of my moving crew that went to Denver. And, you know, it was me and those 5 guys. And I would say on a crappy week, my entire wire was like $4,000, right? Maybe less. I don't even know. But I was telling him today, he's like, how's business? Because he's not been around forever. And I go, well, you know, it's pretty crazy. I'm like, this week, we're going to pay out about $700,000 worth of commissions to the reps on my crew this week. It's pretty cool. You know, you just grow this thing. So there you go.
Yeah, it's amazing, Ed. Keep it
Yeah.
up, my friend. Keep it up. Thank you for your time here today.
My pleasure. Anytime. You know, I love you, Hepster. Hepster's the OG. He's the best.
Thanks for the love, Ed. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
Bye bye.
See you guys.